This video is brought to you by catbeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. Before I start this video, I would like to give a shout out to my sponsor, catbeast.com. Catbeast.com is your one-stop shop for custom snapbacks made from people all around the world. You can design your own custom hats, snapbacks, beanies, and finding other great designs that suits your fitting. Now on to the video. The Russell Westbrook hate at the peak of his powers, the constant embarrassment, getting booed, and just absolutely stinking for the Lakers. Can't imagine an even worse situation for an aging former MVP. Unless he can get out of his nightmare, be traded to another team where he can be most effective having the ball in his hands. He might be very well the most criticized top 75 player all time at the tail end of his career, and might have a worse ending than every one of these players on this list I'm about to name. Other players, after deciding to join a new team, not much injury related or old age, but they just started stinking on all levels after leaving their original teams. Andrew Bynum, who should still be in the NBA, an absolute train wreck after his lone season with the Lakers. The 7-footer averaged career best 19 and 12 on 56% shooting over 60 games during the 2012 season. Age 24, talked about as a top 2 center in the league, right up there with Dwight Howard. There were even some believing Bynum was even better than Dwight, but that was just briefly due to his great post moves. 26 more career games after his Laker tenure, an absolute travesty of a downfall. Bynum was the second best player all season behind Kobe, started in the All-Star team, but his name already in trade rumors. LA was eyeing Dwight Howard for a while before getting him. Yes, injuries and bad knees a huge reason for Bynum's downfall, but his attitude and immaturity, having instances of elbowing JG Barea, bench after taking a deep 3 versus Golden State, re-injured his knee at a bowling alley, that kept him sidelined not until January, but ended up the real player responsible for the trust the process era. The team started to tank hard after seeing his unavailability. Signed 2 years 24 on a LeBron-less Cavs team with no serious playoff aspirations. Bynum's true colors came out, didn't want to play basketball anymore, and never liked it that much in the first place. Playing in the NBA because he's tall and talented did get him over $72 million before the age of 27. Traded to the Bulls, waived, then got the blame for ruining Roy Hibbert's career with the 2014 shit show Pacers. After some failed comebacks, a combination of injuries, being out of shape, unmotivated, and acting like a child, reasons why he fell out right after he was traded from the Lakers. Kobe and Phil Jackson deserve tons of credit for managing the immature Bynum, who started 63 of 74 playoff games, part of a team that won 2 titles. If he was on another team filled with young players at the very bottom of the standings instead of the Lakers, likely would have been out the league sooner. Ben Gordon. After averaging 21 points, played all 82 games on the 09 Bulls, Derrick Rose's rookie season, an incredible 7-game playoff series versus Boston, averages of over 24 points a game, hit some insane shots that may make you jump out of your seat. The 26-year-old sadly never took part in another playoff series again, took less money to play on a bad Pistons team after thinking he was worth more. His next 6 seasons, numbers of under 11 points a game on 42% shooting became irrelevant overnight. Became Rodney Hood's backup with the Pistons, and likely not happy Rip Hamilton still better at the time. If Gordon's still on the Bulls in 2011, starting at the 2 instead of Keith Bogans, perhaps the team with D Rose mixed the finals. Being undersized as a shooting guard, not a good defender, overestimated his worth, and likely got into his head. Hard to imagine if he remained with the Bulls after 2009, his game would have regressed this quickly. Joakim Noah. At the very prime of his career during the 2014 season, the 6'11 center, why the Bulls remained very competitive after Derrick Rose's injuries, considered a top-tier center, first team All-NBA, even finished 4th for MVP voting. At 28 and 29 years old, considered the best passing center at the time, but his numbers after 2014, disastrous to say the least. Went all out every night, similar to a big man's version of Patrick Beverley, regressed the following 2 seasons, had shoulder surgery with the franchise, then New York gave him 4 years $70 million, an absolute travesty of a decision, still got paid till 2022, suspended for taking PEDs. His most memorable highlight, or lowlight I should say, the embarrassing air ball that landed somewhere between the free throw line and the basket, fought with coach Jeff Hornacek, Partied too much at the meatpacking district of New York, too much bottle service of course, became out of service on the court at MSG, as terrible can be. Mentally and physically exhausted when the franchise gambled, praying he would return to his all-star level self, played 100 games combined each of his last 4 seasons, being a bad shooter and never rounding out his all-around game. Once he couldn't move as well physically and lost some quickness, it was all over. Josh Smith, remembered as one of the worst advanced stats players all time, his one awful season with the Pistons ruined his reputation and career for good. Once viewed as one of the most explosive do-it-all types, even talked about as a bootlegged version of LeBron, from being the youngest to record 1,000 blocks, all defensive team caliber, having Andre Drummond and Greg Monroe on the Pistons together forced Smith to play the 3, which he was terrible at, couldn't shoot for the sake of life. Signed 4 years, 54, lasted just 28 games before the team straight up waived him, having over $40 million left on his deal. Smith's overall numbers don't look too bad on paper until the analytics show up. 26% from deep, known as an inefficient chuckster with a low basketball IQ, still 28 at the time, supposed to be in his prime. The lack of discipline and always wanting to play a different kind of game that's not best for him. Viewed as someone who's supposed to be a multiple-time all-star but never truly lived up to his potential, the misguided bad shots and still settling, wasting possessions away. Aside from that Game 6 in a 1 in 1,000 chances comeback 2015 playoffs, Smith out the NBA by 32, playing out of position, ruined him overnight. J Smooth became J Not So Smooth, ended his career playing like he was drinking too much Grey Goose. Very J Harsh.
For the game, Smith.
Lance Stephenson. After an amazing 2014 campaign, the full-time Pacers starter, numbers of nearly 14 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 49% shooting, Indy allowed Lance to simply be Lance, express his style and emotions on the court for the best regular season team in the East, to being below average teams, performing bad numbers, and not being the same anymore. Lance also led the league in triple-doubles in the 2014 season. Who would have guessed that? But after not being an all-star, while teammate Roy Hibbert got the nod, plus with the trade of veteran Danny Granger, the team collapsed overnight, struggled to end the season. His gestures, from blowing kisses to LeBron, acting immature, losing his discipline, and fighting with Evan Turner at practice, value being more of an entertainer than a ball player. Stephenson could have truly became an all-star if he took his game more seriously. Without all the extra hocus pocus, decided to sign with the Hornets in free agency, 3 years $27 million, rejected Indy's offer of 5 years $44, just 23 years young at the time, and what's supposed to be a bright future, Lance got a taste of his own medicine. After he struggled badly, team traded him to the Clippers after 1 season, didn't fit with any other team besides the Pacers, simply because Indy, the only franchise that allowed Lance to be himself, failed to fit in any other role, needed the ball in his hands. Ironically, Indy gave him another chance late 2017, rejuvenated himself a little bit, only to lose to LeBron in back-to-back playoffs again, to joining him with the Lakers, went overseas to China afterwards, out the league and only brought back due to crazy COVID. Third stint with the Pacers, played like flashes of himself again, now a free agent at 32. Isaiah Thomas. Finished 5th for MVP voting, averaged almost 29 points a game, 6 assists on 46% shooting. As a 5'9 guard, insanely impressive no matter how you look at it. To close it down the stretch, but still a year away from a new contract, only to have injuries derailed him, especially his hip, limited to 109 games afterwards till 2022. Numbers of just 11.7 points on 39% shooting, played for 5 different teams after Boston. A shell of himself, especially after blindsidedly traded to LeBron's Cavs, a team where big name players can't afford to waste time producing. Thomas droned right in, wasn't allowed to warm up and get his rhythm going before getting ridiculed and blamed for the losses after 3 games. The quickness no longer there, became a negative player given the lack of defense. The C's had a great lineup around him with the big bodies of Amir Johnson, Al Horford, strong screen setters, the physical Jay Crowder, and defensive specialist Avery Bradley hit IT's defensive flaws. In reality, Thomas wasn't gonna put up those numbers for any other team besides Boston. An absolute joy to watch in his prime. Now in 2022, might be signed again, but not expected to play that many more NBA games for his career going forward. Lamar Odom, after winning sixth man, having a productive 2011 campaign, the 31-year-old averaged over 14 points, 9 rebounds on 53% shooting for the two-time defending champions, to being irrelevant as a productive player in a blink of an eye, literally became one of the worst players afterwards. 6'10" power forward, lethal as a sixth man, dominated with Kobe and Powell on the floor, but given all the countless tragedies faced from growing up in the tough streets of Jamaica, Queens, to his cousin being murdered in 2011 after attending his funeral, Odom a passenger in a crash that ended up killing a 15-year-old boy, then after being part of the failed Chris Paul trade, an angry Odom shocked the Lakers would do that to him, felt betrayal given he wasn't in a good state of mind, also started to have some personal troubles with Khloe Kardashian, demanded a trade, ended up in Dallas, lost his motivation for ball altogether, averaged 6.6 points, became a big shell of himself with the Clippers, his final NBA season 2013, being borderline all-star to one of the worst players in the NBA in a span of 2 years, to getting more opportunities. Odom couldn't put himself together and sadly ended up in the disc most remembered as one of Stephen A. Smith's most memorable rant.
His very first move as the executive was to sign Lamar Odom, who was on crack.
Deron Williams, from talked about as one of the 2 best point guards to being an average player and completely out the league by age 32, Williams regressed heavily since demanding out of Utah from bad angles to not excelling in a different system. Williams got plenty of disrespect for failing to carry the Nets far, disappointing stints from Utah small market media to the hostile New York City big market. The criticism too much to handle, perhaps his bulky frame put too much weight on those ankles, not wanting to be that great after being roasted to lacking work ethic, called out by veteran Paul Pierce, then getting brought out by Brooklyn, even weighed by his hometown Mavs, ended up with the 2017 Caps, an absolute travesty of a finals performance, out the league after. The shocking result was, Williams likely couldn't care less, never appeared to attempt to make any serious comeback, and likely moved on faster than most older NBA players, recently focused more on boxing, truly one of the former forgotten great point guards. Hedo Turkoglu, after playing absolutely out of his mind for Orlando, being the closer and clutch shot maker, essentially a poor man's version of Luka, after the Magic wanted Vince Carter, a proven scorer to make up for Dwight's inconsistent offense, signed for 5 years $55 with Toronto. Turk proceeded to not care about basketball again after amazing averages of 17 points, 5 and 5 as the second most important player on a finals team, to just putting up 8.4 points 2015, his last with the Clippers, stints with Phoenix, and then a second time with Orlando, suspended 20 games for violating the league's anti-doping policy. The last few seasons of his career viewed super negatively. Lots of young NBA fans under the age of 20 today forgot how great mid to late 2000s Hedo Turkoglu was. Allen Iverson, always an icon, one of the most polarizing and inspirational players from the ones that came after him. After getting very old with Denver, AI still a superstar level player until age and the lack of discipline on and off the court caught up with him. A big drop off from his final season with the Nuggets to being in Detroit, no longer superstar material, only knew to play one way and gave everything he had each and every night. The attitude and desire he had for the game, second to none. Simply couldn't adapt to being a role player, refused to come off the bench for Memphis after 3 games. His ego simply got the best of him, could have ended his career on better terms if he elected to come off the bench and get buckets for a few more seasons. Simply refused after carrying his teams since coming into the league. After regressing, the lack of willingness to change caught AI off guard. Despite what all the analytics say, Iverson's athletic gifts and impact on the court could only be understood for those who had the pleasure of watching him in the 2000s. Ask 1,000 NBA fans between the ages of 30 and 40 years old today who was their favorite player between the late 90s to the late 2000s. Iverson easily top 5 on their list, easily over the likes of Tim Duncan, Garnett, and Nowitzki without question. Honorable mentions include Steve Francis after his tenure with the Magic, still in his late 20s, heavily regressed, failed to work with Stephon Marbury in New York, had an ego, also bad surgery. Ty Lawson never quite became a true star after being traded to the Rockets, became an awful NBA player overnight, from over 15 points a game in 2015 to just 5, while Kemba Walker had one great season with Boston but slowed down by injuries after. still over a 19-point-a-game score in 2021, all of a sudden traded and then waived by OKC, then benched by the Knicks to out the NBA at 32. Walker's regress happened in the blink of an eye. Seemed like it was only yesterday when Kemba was playing crunch time minutes in the 2020 All-Star game. Others I didn't mention, you probably wonder, Carmelo Anthony after New York to OKC. Not on this list. After proving to adapt his role in Portland, his career could have ended brutally if the Blazers didn't give him another chance, embrace being a role player. Derrick Rose's career also could have easily ended after failing with Cleveland in 2018. Didn't let it affect him, caught a second win as a role player, adjusted nicely. Danny Granger was already too banged up the last 2 seasons with the Pacers, and Jeremy Lin had an okay career after his time with the Knicks. I wouldn't say his career was ruined since he was very borderline and almost could have been out the league for good before the insanity happened. Thank you so much for watching this video. Which one of these 10 former NBA stars this century career got ruined the worst after joining a new team? Let me know in the comments below. Which one shocked you most? I love to hear your thoughts. If you're new to the NBA or new to my NBA channel, hit the subscribe button if you want to learn more about the National Basketball Association. Truly appreciate each and every one of y'all. I love all of you. See you next time.